and welcome to the 64 Doors. Today we're going to open door 24. Here we find Inventor, and this is a single-minded and original archetype. It's a mastermind that brings all kinds of genius inventions to the world. We're going to look at this archetype from a human design perspective and a gene key perspective. Right now we have the Sun in Taurus in gate 24. We have the Earth in Scorpio in gate 44, and the design part of the cross is in Aquarius and Leo in gate 19 and gate 33. So this is what we call the Incarnation Cross in human design. So this is if somebody's born, they are born today, right, in Taurus in gate 24. And if we look at 3 months before, that's when we say that their soul incarnated in their body, and that's going to be 19. Because remember that when we look at the grave mandala or we look at astrology, it goes counterclockwise. So when we go this way, it's actually going back in the wheel. And this cross in human design is called the right angle cross of the 4 ways. And it has the theme of those 4 gates. So the 24 that we're going to speak more about, but here in human design, we call it rationalizing or assimilating or the gate of return. We're going to speak more about that. And then there's this theme of alertness, but also has to do with sensing and knowing. It's a splenic gate about who are the people that you're here to be around. What is your soul fractal? And it comes from this splenic sense, you could say. And then we have the 19 that has to do with needs and a sensitivity of knowing what is needed, and the sensitivity can also be used to even listen to the whispers and communicating with animals, for example. Then we have the 33, that is the gate of retreat. So it's about going out in the world, having an experience, coming back, making sense of it, and remembering who you are, why you're here, what you're here to share with the world when you go out again. And it's also connected to the 13 that has to do with listening. So I want you to understand that first, when we come into a cross, for the first couple of days, it's going to be a right angle cross. So that would be if you have, for example, a 1-3 profile or a 2-4 profile, then you would be a right angle cross. Then in the middle of the transit, we go into a juxtaposition cross. And here it's called the cross of rationalization. This is a 4-1 profile. This is what we call the fixed fate. It's not a right angle cross. It's not a left angle cross. It's in the middle. And we still have the theme of the 24 and the 44. But instead here, the design part of the cross has gone into 13 and 7. So here we have this gate of listening, of empathy, of taking in, of being that aura that can hear and that can remember and that can be even optimistic about the past and the future. And then we have the role of the self, which is a G center gate as well. And it has to do with the inner guidance and to even be able to live a virtuous life and to become a role model, we could say. So there's a leadership theme in this. And then when we go into the last days of the transit, we're going to be in a left angle cross. So here we might have a 5-1 or a 6-2 or 6-3, and we still have 24, the 44, the 13, and the 7. So these themes are there, but it's a little bit different if you have it as a 4-1 cross, of course, or if you have it as a left angle cross. So this is what happens in each transit, basically, that we go through these different crosses that are corresponding to different profiles in human design. And if we go back to the body graph, we're going to see that we have the 24 that points up from the Ajna center, meeting the 61 in the head. So the whole channel is the 24-61. And when we have hanging gates, if you only have one side, you don't have the whole process. It's almost kind of grasping for that other part of it. So it's important to always look at what is the whole process, whether you have the 61 or not. And if you go to the circuitry book, so this is Richard Rudd's book about the gates. I think it's even before the gene keys probably. So here we have the channel of awareness, the sign of a thinker. And it says the quick reference theme is so long as you're not using your mind to try to resolve your life, it's always capable of inspiring somebody else to see life in a completely new way, right? So it's not about getting stuck in the head and being a loop of the same thoughts that go round and round, but it's actually drawing in or taking in that inspiration of the 61. And you can think about it in the body graph also, that comes in through the head and it goes down into the ajna. Maybe if you have an open head center, then it's very open. You don't even really decide what comes in, and then it gets assimilated in the 24. We can see that some of the keywords are probably, where do we have them? Some of the words are silence, mantras, pondering. Yeah, you could say it's pondering, letting the inspiration come in, pondering on it, and then something completely new might come through. And I mean, I feel like this is a simplification, and that's often what I feel like we see in the keynotes of human design. Go over things over and over again, and seeking to rationalize them. I feel like that is almost the shadow frequency of the 24. That is really when the 24 allows to not really seeking, but more contemplating, pondering, letting it be. That's when we can have those quantum leaps in awareness from the 24. And we can actually, it's good this week because we already have released the archetype in the 64 doors. So you can already go in and see it there before the video is even up. So we look at the internal motivator of the 24, creative thinking and living, pressure to resolve a thought process. So we have that pressure. It's not to say it's not there, but what I feel is this archetype has learned to do the best of it and not be a slave under the mind. And the Achilles heel then can be the melancholy over no resolution. And remember, this is individual circuitry. If you look in the body graph, it was kind of in the middle when you have different channels. The one in the middle is the individual one. So there is melancholy. So, and here it's melancholy of not having a resolution, going over something, but not finding a new solution or finding the answer. And then the fear of ignorance or the anxiety over mysteries. And this is also when the 24 loses the connection somehow to the 61. Then everything that comes into the 61, which is the mystic, everything it has to do with a great mystery can feel dangerous almost. And this is what we said in the beginning too: the positive attributes, ingenious, original, and it masters silence. So this is the more civic frequency when we actually can allow those pauses, almost you could say, in the thinking process when something completely new comes in. And if we go from human design a little bit more into what I always love to go into, which is the living library, we see the frequency band. So in the low frequency, we have this tendency to addiction, but it's not really, like an addiction is always, there's always a mental aspect, I would say, in the addiction. And that's how we can see that. We can see that so clearly with the 24 because it is Ajna gate. We have it's in our mind, and it's connected to the programming partner, like we could see in the rave mandala. So the opposite gate, you can see it here as well. They're opposite in the wheel. So interference and addiction. And here it is really that loop that goes, whether, the easiest example might be you going to the fridge and have like emotional eating, and every time something feels hard, you would reach for that cookie, and that can go over and over and over again, and you're interfering with your own genius, you could say, once that happens. And what is the moment where you can pause and not where you can stop? You can pause enough to actually pivot that behavior, and it feels like I need this to soothe myself, but maybe there is something else to do. I've been looking at a process this week called the completion process, and it's Teal Swan that came up with it. It's 18 steps to basically go back and allow your inner child, you could say, to experience the emotions that weren't validated when you actually were a kid. And that is a new way of dealing, for example, with an emotional pressure or turmoil that you don't know what to do with. And you could also say that when society, like these are the soul fractals, if you are with the wrong people in the wrong place in the wrong culture, you could say where there is no teamwork, it can be easier to fall down into the addictions. But when there is a teamwork, when there is a right soul fractal, when there is this sensing, like I said with the 44 from the splenic gate, it's much easier that something new is going to happen, that there is going to be a solution. And the higher frequencies is the silence and the synergy. And you can see when everybody's in the right place in society or in an organization or in a family, when everybody is doing what they love and what they're good at, then there is no, like, the music is not playing false. There is, it's like silence. So it's like perfect rhythm, perfect vibration, a perfect song, you could say. So, and I like also silence, exiting the wheel, invention, resting in the gap, addiction, the great genetic glitch. If we go into to the I Ching, this is Earth over thunder. That's a kind of interesting, if you think about it, Earth over thunder, it feels like it would be flipped, right? And what it says is the turning point. New life springs forward from the depth, receiving awakening from within. That's beautiful. And addiction is dislocated agitation, invention is orienting initiative, and silence is unified awakening. I like that, right? You see that the 44 is in here because it's about unified awakening. It's not just the individual awakening. Actually, it is an individual gate, but awakening is something that is universal and collective, you could say. We can also see, this is beautiful, we had a live today with Tim Brainard, who is the person who invented the body keys, and he has the 24 in his pearl and his life's work. And we were speaking a lot about this mind connection with the 24. And then he was speaking about poetry, and that's what brought me back of feeling that actually we are dealing with a Taurus gate here. And Taurus is Earth, right? And it's not what we would think about an air, the air element of the mind going and being very much up here. It has a grounded aspect to it. So it is the lover, the dancer, the embodied beauty, the flow and the presence. Like once that penny drops and we get into more awareness and we get into new insights, you could say. So it is much about the feeling as well in this archetype. In the dream arc, we have the nightjar, the har, and the flying fish. Programming partner will look at. We can also look at the integral human design. So stream of creativity. So that's an individual stream. And then blankness, contemplation, and mystery are the keynotes for the frequency band from the shadow to the city in this channel. I also feel like we can go back. Is there something with the coda ring? Probably not. We also have the addictive tendencies, and this is also something you can read more about. This is a simplification, a little bit of what Richard Rudd is saying in his book, but frozen, it's like to freeze up when you're in the repressive and you can't really go anywhere because it's frozen. You can't really change your behavior. And then reactive is anxious and it's trying to, in some way or another, going outward to make that anxiety go away, right? So that's kind of the addiction that we think of usually. But here you can read more about it and go into it for yourself. I feel like this is an amazing week in the transit of Jinky 24, the archetype of the inventor, to look at our patterns, maybe even our addictions, to see the loops that are either happening in our heads or in our behaviors, and see when we're going into those loops that are not constructive for us, if we can actually pause and see what happens if you don't go to the fridge to get that cookie, for example. See if you just pause, if there is a pivoting, if there is something new that comes through, if there is an insight, if there is a feeling of wow, of understanding what it's actually about behind that loop or behind that behavior. I feel it is a week to look into our addictions and to in our relationship to different things. So for example, how are you using food? Are you using it to nurture yourself, or are you also maybe using it to soothe a part of you that doesn't feel content? How are you using sex? Are you using it to have a circulation of your life force and intimacy with another person? Or maybe are you using it when you don't feel powerful in some area of your life, to go and look for that to feel better? Or are you using it in the relationship to maybe just confirm to yourself that everything is well because there is sexuality, for example? How do you choose your relationships? Why do you have the people around you that are around you? Why do you choose to spend time with these people? Is it to get validation? Is it, there are so many questions that you can use to look at those patterns that are automatic for you, and that you maybe don't take enough time to pause in your life to actually see, is this good for me? Physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So this is a good week, and I would say, especially if you have an open spleen in human design, take this time and ask yourself, those things that are in my life that are lingering or that are looping, what are they leading to in my life? How are they nurturing me? How are they good for me? How do they lead to an inspiration? And also think about the thought process if you want. When you get an inspiration, it comes in through your head in that gate of inspiration, the 61, then it comes through the 24, and this is what you do with it. Are you allowing enough contemplation and enough time, enough space for the quantum leaps that can happen in the 24 to happen? Because this is what's going to drop down then in the other end of the ashna, in the 43, what comes down into the throat in the 23, which is about your unique expression. So see that the inspirations that come into you, what happened with them? Do you even have time to let them ponder, to let the mystery unfold in you, so that you actually can conceptualize it and assimilate it in order to be able to express it? So this is a very unique week, is what I feel. There can also be some melancholy, because this is the individual circuitry, as I was saying before. So even allow that silence, maybe that melancholy, maybe that feeling of not getting there and not arriving, maybe that feeling of mystery that is both beautiful and a little bit scary. Allow all these things this week, and see what happens when you allow the gap, the void, the melancholy. Thank you.